Hello ladies and gentlemen and welcome to the channel. Did you ever want to have some Killhouse kind of training with your friends in ARMA? Kind of like you were airsofting just to practice some CQB skills? Well, today we're gonna make it a reality in a non-lethal way. As you can see, these bots are having fun and we're gonna have some too. We're gonna make it simple and I'm gonna explain it in the most painless way possible. Who am I kidding? You're gonna need ARMA 3, a decent code editor, YouTube playback speed controls on this video, and most importantly, some coffee. So, let's go to ARMA, open up the editor, I'll find the virtual reality map, it's the best for this kind of stuff, and then spend the next 5 minutes looking for Shoothouse assets. As it turns out, Shoothouse is 2 words in ARMA, so FYI, if you're looking for them, just find them. Anyway, just plank some objects, copy them, and just paste some corners, copy more, rotate, place more objects, and continue until you have like a kind of like a Shoothouse looking shape. Then let's place some obstacles. Place 1 or 2, make it look like a paintball field, place a wall to cover the spawns, and let's save the mission. Remember to not binarize the scenario file and save it like something, I don't know, perhaps a shoot house? Okay, let's go. Let's add more objects, more obstacles, and let's add a table. A desk will actually look better, so let's place a desk. And plug a laptop on top of it. It's gonna be like our command center. Let's put that on top. And great, that looks amazing. Okay, let's place a guy. We need someone to be the instructor, the range master, whatever. So let's have that. Let's give him also a catwalk to walk onto. It was actually quite hard to find this object, but hey, it kind of looks okay. That's the only object that heads stairs. And then don't move the objects on the side. Obstacles are fine. Let's move it somewhere that makes sense. I'm just kidding. It doesn't make sense anyways. Okay, let's see. Nice. Okay, and when you go down and you actually break your legs, you're gonna realize that the desk is turned the other way around because inventory opens up the drawers that are facing the wrong way. So yeah, let's jump back into the editor and let's fix that by rotating it. Great, now that's sorted out, let's add more players. Let's add some guys that will be actually taking part in the game in the Shoothouse. Give them some sensible loadouts, I don't know, some uniform that fits, maybe not the Kurdish ones, find something that fits nicely. Okay, that looks like something I would wear to a range or a Shoothouse like this. Now you can add more stuff, there's a lot of tactical gear that can fit or maybe not really. Like for example some shamags or these glasses. Pick something that makes sense, like these shades. They are very tactical and looking cool. So let's pick them. Maybe a vest as well. Might be, you know, useful to have one to cover your body. And let's maybe pick a gun as well. Turns out the SPAR 16 is actually just a HK 416, but you know, not licensed, I guess. MP5 is good. 9mm doesn't penetrate that much in the walls like 5.56, which makes more sense than the Shoothouse, doesn't it? Okay, great. Now that you have the loadout, let's copy the same guy like 6 times. Select them all and then let's just put them against the wall, I guess. Great, now that we have the basics sorted out, let's save the mission file. In our mission folder, let's make an init.sqf file which runs for all clients and the server when the mission starts. Introduce the important variables like Shoothouse playing, which will be true when the game is on, and I've also added the Shoothouse allow FF variable to easily toggle if the friendly fire is allowed. Now we can write some functions that will actually start and stop the game. So essentially in the Shoothouse start game, I will just set the variable to true and I will gonna use the public variable on it. Same stuff goes for the stop game. Instead I will just set it back to false and also broadcast it with public variable. And now you're probably wondering, what the hell is this public variable thing? And well, that's a good question. And well, so essentially, if you look in the documentation, it says broadcast mission namespace variable and its current value to all computers, server and client. Essentially what it does, think of it this way. We have this kind of network, right? There's the server on the top, which runs the game, and, well, you know, does all the things. And then there's the clients that are connected to it, running ARMA. This is all your computers of people who run ARMA, right? So one of these guys goes, okay guys, I have this variable that I want to set to true for all of you. And the other ones go, okay, let's set it. And now you have it. So it basically like synchronizes. Yeah, it does. So yeah, just kind of synchronize that over the network for everyone. Let's give a name to our instructor guy in the editor as a variable name, instructor. And also same for the laptop that's on the desk. It might be useful later to refer that. And well, you guessed it. Let's go and make a file called initPlayerLocal. This is only a file that runs locally for every player, and scripts that are fucking amazing. Anyways, add action adds a new action on the scroll wheel for your object. So computer add action, name of the actions, the first argument that you pass. And in the brackets, you essentially put the code that will run whatever this action is selected and then called by the user. Makes sense, right? So let's just call the start game. How about that? I'm obviously referencing this function that we wrote earlier today. And probably same can go for the other one as well. You can add an action to stop the game. So let's copy that over and let's just change the function that we call stop game, and then let's just call the stop game. Cool. Okay, but what if we wanted our instructor only to run it? Some of you might just want to copy this thing over, just paste it in the init field of the instructor, and boom, it makes perfect sense, right? Well, yeah, it works. He has these actions, but if you go back and if you try to run the same mission with a different guy, like one of the players, you will notice that he actually, when it comes to the computer, boom, there we go. He has them too, and you might want to tell your instructor about it, but then he's gonna just look at you and turn his back, and yeah, he ignores you. The reason is init fields are run locally by every client on mission start, which essentially means that it doesn't matter that you put it in his init field. Every player has to execute the init field of every single thing on the map to have the same version of the game. Don't worry, we can fix it easily. Let's have a look at the documentation of add action, and you'll find out there's a lot of other arguments that it takes, including the condition, which basically is some code that it runs to see if the action should be shown to the user. So let's just copy the whole thing over, because there's a lot of other arguments that we need to pass through, the default ones, before we can even pass the condition. So let's just add these things in. As you can see, VS Code even tells you which argument you're working with right now, so shortcut doesn't matter, condition is the one that we need. So let's see, the player is the instructor. How about that? And we can also check if the game is already on, because we probably don't want to stop the game if it's not on. Same with starting the game if it's on. So now I'm just a regular player, and you can see I have no options. Nothing. Even if I zoom in. Now if I play as an instructor, let's see. I walk up to it, and launch a look at that. Start Shithouse game, stop Shithouse game. Splendid, that works fine. But of course that's just some actions, and we actually need something for those guys. We need this game to work, so let's do this. So I want to split players into two teams, red and blue, and for that I will create arrays for each team and a function which will assign a unit to a team. The function will take two parameters. One will be the unit that we need to assign and the team. Then I will set a shouldHouse team variable on the unit, which is kind of like setting an object property in any object-oriented programming language. By the way, it takes 3 arguments, and if the last one is true, it will also broadcast it over the network, so all players will know that this unit is in that team. And then a very simple if statement. If the team is red, just put them in the red team players array. Otherwise, put them in the blue team players. And also, of course, since we want everyone to know about this, we're going to have to broadcast it over the network. So let's just use a public variable on each of these variables when we update them. And yeah, I think it's good to go. And of course, don't forget to put them in quotes, because I often forget about it, and you want to tell them which variable you're broadcasting and not the value of it. Anyways, now back in initPlayerLocal, I think it's time to add some actions for the players to actually join the teams. So let's create an action to join Team Red and Team Blue. By the way, don't forget that our function, which assigns players to the teams, actually takes 2 arguments, one of them being the actual player. So we can pass it through, because an action actually passes that to the statement for a parameter called color. So let's just add this in really quick. So yeah, you can see I have the color and red as arguments passed to it, just like we set up in our function definition. So that should work fine. And then another thing that makes sense to do is to restrict that only players who are not instructors can do this. We probably don't want the instructor to just join a team and kick everyone's ass. That would be very, very unfair. So let's just make sure that the player who will run this will not be an instructor and also will not be already assigned to a team, because you probably don't want someone to switch a team in the middle of the game. Doesn't make sense, does it? You can get the variable that we set earlier with get variable command. I use -1 as the default value, but it's probably not the best one to compare against. I actually changed my mind later, which you'll see. But yeah, let's go together for the process, shall we? Same for the blue, and let's test it. How about that? Now I wonder if you saw it, but I actually made a boo-boo in the code, so let me know if you found it. But yeah, as you can see, I chose a team and now I can choose it again, which is not good. Why? Because color is not the first argument, it's the second one. So yeah, but before I realized it, I actually changed this to an empty string, which is also a good decision in my opinion. Makes a bit more sense since red and blue were there as values and they were strings, so why not? By the way, it's kind of great in ARMA that you can just restart the mission anytime you want and the scripts will just run again. Anyways, so of course it will not work. I'm gonna choose a team, and if you're wondering, since I got the arguments wrong, it's actually setting the variable on the laptop and not on me as a player. So now the player is team blue or whatever, not myself. So yeah, probably not the best option. And here we go. So let's add the target parameter, which should be there from the very beginning. It's the first one that gets called. So yeah, now that changes things. Look at that. Join team red, and the actions are gone, and then I can go to the console and check it, and it says red. So when the public variable changes, we want our clients to run something locally, and we can achieve that with add public variable event handler. Jesus Christ, that's so long. But basically you just tell it which variable to watch, and then in the brackets you just pass it the code that you want to run every time this variable changes. Pretty cool. Anyways, it gets two parameters, the name and the value. The value is the one that we want to see. Basically, I'm going to pass it through execvm to this other script file that I'm going to make, handle game state change at SQF, and it's going to become the keyword this. So I can write, for example, is game on equals this, and now this keyword will be essentially this value that I pass to it. If you want to pass more arguments, you can actually put them in an array like that, and then in your script you can do select 0 to select the first item from the array, or just do params, just pass it this way like we did previously. Now, when the game starts, I want to run a bunch of things. For example, I want to restrict damage, and I want players to do other things when they get damaged. And on the other hand, I will probably want to clean up all this when the game ends, which basically is in that else statement, right? So let's create an event handler for damage. So essentially, I want to attach an event handler to a player, not to a string. God damn it. Player, add event handler, handle damage, and essentially in the brackets I will just pass the code that will run every single time a player gets damaged. I also have this handler ID variable because I want to keep track of it. But anyways, it takes a lot of params, but the unit is the most important for now. And then I thought that if I run disable AI anim on this unit, will essentially switch off all animations, but I kind of misunderstood it. The 0 at the end was supposed to, kind of return 0, disallowing all damage, but it doesn't work that way, turns out. So let's also set variable on the player. Let's set the handler ID so that we can keep track of the number of this handler, kind of. And also, we don't need to broadcast it to anyone else. It's local, it handles locally. No one else needs to know about it. We might want to go for the list of current players, though, because if they are bots, they might be local. They are not players that are in the game. So let's also do that. Let's run the same code for all the AI bots that could be playing with us. And essentially for that, I'm gonna just grab the array called Killhouse blue team players and also the red team players as well. And because I'm a sucker for reusable code and I actually want to reuse the same code, I'm just gonna move the whole event handler script to a variable and then I will just call it from there. Then obviously you have to update the variable in your previous place. And if you decide to change the name of it, because why not, then you also might want to update it again. Now, of course, I need to loop through the array of the elements of all the players in the team, so I'm going to use this beautiful function called for each, and in the brackets just specify the code you want to run for every single item in that array. For each actually puts the current item in the array in that iteration into this variable called x, underscore x actually. So I'm going to check if it's local, and if it's local, that means I will do all this magic again for it. I'm going to attach the handler for it, and of course, after that, we need to also set the variable. And of course, I have to do the same thing for the other team, because red team also deserves to be invincible. But if you think about it, we're checking if the unit is local and in the array. So we kind of don't need the player part on top anyways, because it's going to be handled by our for each loops, since the player is in the team, and the player is also local to us. So, let's do it. Let's set the variable. And by the way, I don't know if you noticed that, but again, we have reusable code. It's literally the same exact code that runs in the for each. So how about we just put them all together, both arrays, red team players and blue team players, just shove them all into one array, and then let's look for this bigger double size array just one time. Makes a lot more sense, doesn't it? We can also move it away instead of copying it over, because we're gonna need this array anyways in both cases. So let's do that. Now in the else, at the end of the game, I probably want to unset everything I did at the start of the game. So let's go through this. So first of all, let's see if the unit is local for us, because we don't want to mess with someone else's units. Then we want to enable the AI back to allow them to move. So let's also load the handler ID from the variable. Remember when we run the set variable on the unit? That's why. We can now get it at the end of the game, get the handler ID, check if it exists, and if it does, let's just unhook it. So we basically run current unit, remove event handler, which type of handler, first of all, handle damage, and then the handler ID. And then we want to probably unset it as well on the unit, set it to something that's ambiguous, like nil. By the way, just go to init player local, find our actions that start the game and stop it, and let's just remove this part about the instructor because I want to check just a few things. Anyways, it didn't work. As you can see, I can kill people even though the game is on. So something's obviously a bit off. And let's see if I can hurt myself. And guess what? That's right, something's off. So I did some digging, and it turns out that the event handler will not fire on the machine that executed the public variable command. So essentially, I did it, I started the game, but it won't work. I need to now manually execute it on the machine that actually called the function to start the game. So let's do that. Just put it here, true, for start game. And then the same stuff, just false for the stop game. So it still didn't work, and it turns out that add event handler adds the handler, but there could be more handlers that do the same thing from your mods, like Ace mod or something. They might have their own conditions and values that they want to set, so it's not very reliable in our case. So let's try a different approach. So instead I decided to use the allow damage command, which basically completely removes the damage for the unit, and then I was just hoping that it will still trigger the handle damage, which it did, by the way, so that's good news. So yeah, I'm in the game, I joined Team Red, and I also started the game, and I mean, look at that. It works. Nothing, not even a scratch. So yeah, let's crack on. So basically, just like the computer and the instructor, now every single player here has a name which I've assigned to them. So now in the init server.sqf file, which I just created, I will just on the server side assign a team to every single guy. And this way I can have, have them assigned on the startup. So now we have Ed, Mike, Robert, Gary, Harry, and then Ronald. However, I did some more testing and it turns out that disable AI function doesn't really do much, as I mentioned earlier. It kind of makes them stuck and they just continue doing what they were doing before you shot them. So yeah, it makes them just walk away. And that was the last anyone ever saw of Mike. And that day, he walked home. Anyways, I decided to use the function that makes people kind of surrender in A3. So, that kind of works perfectly fine. Especially because it's going to work on both AI and actual human players, so why not? And then I got this stupid idea, by the way. So essentially what I've done is I decided to paint people blue and red accordingly. So now on the game start, as you can see, it's in the should house start game. I kind of run this function called set object texture global. Yes, you can run this in ARMA and just change any object's texture, and you can generate texture from a color, so it doesn't have to be an actual image file. You can do it this way, and I'm going to copy it over to the other color as well. Now, the only problem with that is that you need to get your syntax right, because the effects might be kind of weird, as you can see. So yeah, I went to the documentation, and of course, in the color in the parentheses, each number is red, green, blue, and then the alpha channel. And, as you can see, I'm in the game. The guys just look normal, and then I click start, boom, I'm red, the guys are blue and red as well, so we are now split in teams. And check this out, now they surrender when I shoot them, even my own teammates. Pretty cool, huh? And actually, speaking of the devil, remember this variable we introduced, should house allow FF? It was supposed to control if we can actually shoot our friendlies and if it should work. It does currently, we can shoot them, but how about we disable that if we want to? So let's just do it. So in the if, of course, the variable is set to true. I'm gonna run this code. Otherwise, I'm gonna first check. So here comes the thing. Damage handler has a lot of different parameters. One of them is called instigator. So if you just copy it, paste it from the documentation, you will know that instigator is kind of, the person that shot the unit. So unit is the victim, and the instigator is the person who actually fired. So we can compare their shoot house teams, and if they are different, that means they are, of course, from the different teams. So only then we should actually run the captive code. So yeah, let's set it to false and see what happens. Now I run to my friends, and look at that. Nothing happens. Nothing. Absolutely no response. And then I can run to the enemies, and I'm being very careful. I don't know why. They are on the same team, technically, in ARMA, so they don't really see me as a threat. But,
Oh, baby, a triple!
And by the way, of course, you can run any extra code you want on the game start and end, and this is a perfect place to do it if you want to do it locally. Just write in the if is game on or the else statement. Depends if you want on the start. I, for example, added the game start hint and then end X hint because it kind of made sense to me. So yeah, just these things. I just placed a hostile unit somewhere and assigned my red team players to his group. So now the blue team players see me as an enemy, from the AI point of view at least. So yeah, that's why you might see a house in the distance. The AI obviously doesn't understand what's going on. They think they are in the war fight, so they are kind of just camping and doing whatever they want. But they got brave in the end. I tested this thing later on multiplayer with some real players, and it actually played pretty well. So I'm kind of proud of this. It was pretty fun. Anyways, I think that's the end of the project for now. I put a link in the description to my GitHub so you can see the code and try it out for yourself. You can use it on your server if you want to, you can use it with your friends, you can use it with your unit and train and have fun, or even if you want to set up an airsoft/paintball field like this. If you liked this video or learned anything from it, please leave a like and subscribe and leave a comment. That would be very, very much appreciated. I hope you all have a good day and peace out.